Well, welcome. I am super excited to have Michelle Aleckson with us today. Michelle is an author, and we were supposed to connect at the Little Falls Authors Retreat, but alas, we are here over Zoom. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to recoup this opportunity. I was so bummed to get sick over that whole weekend. So thank you for asking me to do this.
Yes. I got to meet you 2 years ago at the event. We didn't get to talk on camera, but it was a pleasure to get to know you and to just share that experience with all of you authors. It was great. So
Thanks. Well, I'm fascinated by what you do. So it was really fun for me too.
oh, good. Well, let's get down into it. I want to hear about your books. Now, I was doing a little looking on your website and I saw something about swoon-worthy heroes, humor, and grace. And I'm hooked. I'm sold. Tell us about these books.
Sure. Well, I just love a love story. I'm happily married, but I still love a love story because I feel like every love story reflects God's pursuing us, and it's just kind of a reflection of that love.
That's a great way of looking at that. I had never thought of that before.
Yeah, I think that's just why I will always have romance in my books. It's just, I love seeing characters overcoming the odds and finding love, because like I said, it's just a reflection of God's love and pursuing of us. And even within the Christian realm, I sometimes feel like even when we know, sometimes that head knowledge doesn't always sink into the heart knowledge about God's amazing love and his grace. So that's really something I strive to put in all my books is that understanding. You'll probably see a lot of second chances and people with a past. And, sometimes I've had someone say like, oh, I didn't really like your main character in the beginning of the book, but I'm like, but she changes. That's the point. Like, we're all flawed people and we need grace. So I write a lot of romance, and I like to have that spiritual thread, at least showing grace and I think something that we're all looking for is a sense of belonging and acceptance, which is another theme in a lot of my books. And I tend to write small town romances. I got to start with Sunrise Publishing and working with Susan May Warren. And so those books are set in Minnesota. And then I've also been branching into more romantic suspense, and that's kind of been fun too. So
Excellent. And then now you live in Minnesota, correct?
yes, I do. I live in central Minnesota, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So.
Well, I live in northern Minnesota, kind of in the middle of nowhere, so we're good.
Right.
So what do you hope people will take away from your characters? And, you kind of gave a little bit of what you like to write, but what do you hope that they, will glean from reading what their journeys are?
I really hope that readers will experience that grace and love and acceptance themselves. Like, I really just hope they read that and they remember how loved they are and how they do belong to. And there's like this gracious Heavenly Father who just has open arms, no matter what walk of life you're from, no matter what you've done in your past. And I just hope they can see a sense of belonging to and just feel that they're loved. And so, yeah.
Yes, I think that is a hard part as human beings, that we don't realize that we really truly are loved by our Creator.
It's just so hard to grasp because it is so out there. It's and it's sometimes hard to see those examples in real life when it's a give and a take, and we're in a very sinful, broken world, and sometimes that brokenness just really gets to us. So I just like to try to remember that there's hope, that there's always belonging and acceptance. So
yes. Now, you've got some books on your shelf there. Can you talk about each of your books?
Sure. So my very first books were in a Deep Haven series, well, like I said, with Susan May Warren, and I wrote Crazy for You first, and then Right Here Waiting. It was really a cool experience. These were my first books because it was very collaborative. So like I said, Susie picked 3 people to kind of write in her fictional world of Deep Haven, Minnesota, and it's a town based up on the North Shore of Minnesota on Lake Superior. I mean, it's really close to Canada. It's up there, and I've loved Susie's books for as long as I can remember. So it was quite an honor to be chosen to like write with her and write in her fictional world that I already loved. And then I got to meet 2 other writers, Rachel Russell and Andrea Christensen, and they also wrote in the series with me. So they wrote like books 1, Rachel wrote book 1 and 4 in the series. Andrea wrote book 2 and 5, and then I wrote book 3 and 6, so kind of ended it. But it was crazy fun just to collaborate and I mean, sometimes writing can be very solitary. So I really love the relationships and being able to collaborate with them, and just learned so much from Susie, who's got like 100+ books out there and has over 1 million copies. So she's just a wealth of knowledge. So that was super exciting for me to get my start that way. And then I had a book come out with Harlequin's Love Inspired Suspense. And this was really kind of fun because there were about 4 years, my husband and I, we lived in Idaho. And actually that's where my parents were both from. And I never grew up there, but I have aunts and uncles. My grandparents lived there. So this was a little bit of, is set in Idaho. So it was kind of fun to go back there and to write this one. And again, it's a completely different publisher, a really different genre, and a lot of different expectations. So that was, and I'm hoping to get a little more contracts with them. And then my latest book is this one, it's The Way You Love Me. And this is another Deep Haven book that we wrote, but this time Andrea, Rachel, and I, we did another series with Sunrise set in Deep Haven. But where my first 2 were kind of centered around this crisis response team, there's a little bit of adventure and rescues that happen. This book, we really wanted to, this series, and rather, we wanted siblings. So to see kind of a sibling relationship and like a whole family perspective. So we each wrote one of the siblings, and I have book 3 in that series again, and they're all standalones though. You could definitely read them alone, but I have the oldest son, Oliver, and it was really cool to write his story because I used a secondary character for the heroine in my other books, and she's a veterinarian there in Deep Haven. And Oliver definitely has a past, and he's coming back to town. He's been estranged from his family. He hasn't been in town since his brother's graduation, and so it was kind of a coming home story. And yeah, that was really fun.
Awesome.
And that one just came out, so.
Well, awesome. So when you collaborate with, or I don't know if it's a collaboration, but when you work with those other authors, we did get to visit with Andrea 2 years ago. Are you meeting with them to be like, okay, what are you guys doing, and how does that work?
Yes, with all of those books, we at least got together and did an initial plotting kind of weekend where we kind of went these are who the characters are, and this is the main plot, and just so we could kind of make sure there was some continuity there. Yeah. And especially writing siblings, that made it a little even harder because we wanted them to have the same kind of a past moment that really defined each of them. And I don't think it's giving it away, but they all lost their parents. And so obviously that's going to affect children in different ways. So we really had to collaborate a lot on that and making sure we had the details down. So as it kind of showed up in our stories, that we were keeping that continuity there. But then there was a lot that we just kind of do on our own. And then it's just a matter of keeping in touch. And we still keep in touch a lot. We really gotten to know them so much better. So we have a long text thread going. We do some Zoom meetings. Andrea is in Minnesota. She lives a couple hours away from me, so I can maybe see her every now and then. But Rachel's out in Oregon. So we've done Zoom meetings to keep in touch too. And so we share, life, but also books. And working together has been one of the biggest gifts in writing for me, is to get to know those two.
Oh, very cool. So do you ever draw off any of your personal experiences when you're getting a story, finding what that's going to be and the character growth or anything like that?
Um, yeah, I try not to maybe make it super obvious, but even in just trying to dig into the emotion of a scene, um, everybody has felt certain emotions at different times, and the way they kind of maybe demonstrate that or work through it might be different. But just to go back to, hey, when did I feel that way? Even so, one of the things with Oliver is he's a recovering addict. And even though I haven't necessarily had, addictions myself, as far as, a lot of people think of addictions, even just as easy as how hard would it be to give up sugar? Like, I don't know if
I
anyone's
know. I've
done
tried
that.
and it's super hard.
I know. And so, no, it might not be drugs or alcohol or painkillers or something, but just trying to dig into that. Oh gosh, remember like the temptation and what does that feel like? And how do you deal with it? And like what kind of body language? I also try to study even like movies or shows for things like that too. But yeah, you definitely draw on your own experience, whether you know it or not. Just your own knowledge and understanding. So I've lived with people that have, struggled with addiction. I've seen the consequences of it for sure. So, and then some of them, like Lena, who is my heroine in Right Here Waiting, she's a veterinarian. I don't really know anything about that, but I have a dog and we have a cat, and but I also made her more of a very, she seems cold to people because she's kind of robotic and she doesn't really show her emotions. But really, there's so much going on underneath the surface. And for some of that, I have a son who is, ASD on the autism spectrum, very high functioning, but sometimes I see the way he reacts in the world and how it could be misconstrued, but I know there's so much more going on underneath the surface. So, and I also kind of wrote my heroine in this one in Hidden Ranch Peril, kind of similarly, like she has some very similar struggles, but didn't really make it super obvious, like, oh, got autism spectrum disorder or anything, but you definitely learn a lot when living with somebody. So yeah, those are just things that, whether I realize it or not, they just kind of sneak into my writing. So
Sure. I think it'd be so hard to be an author because you've got all these different things that you're writing about, and to get them accurate, like how much research do you put into a book?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. One of the things I thought was, oh, if I write contemporary, I won't have to do research. Like, I love reading historical books, but I'm like, I don't want to get into the research. That's so overwhelming. But I am surprised how much I still have to research. So, when I took my dog to the vet, I asked the veterinarian there, like, hey, could I ask you some questions? Or I just kind of saw how they ran things, or especially with some of the romantic suspense elements, like the law enforcement aspect or things like that. Well, thankfully, I have a very good friend who works closely with the county sheriff's office here, and I can kind of put questions out to her. But there's a lot of Googling. There's a lot of book research, trying to find people who live that career. Right now, this summer, I'm going to have books set out in Montana, again with Sunrise, and this will be about smoke jumpers and hotshots, which are firefighters who fight forest fires. I don't know anything about that, so that meant like reading some biographies and things like people who do know that world. And so yeah, I was surprised that there's still a lot of research and there's still things I get wrong, but thankfully we live in an age where there's a lot of information out there. You'd be surprised some of the things I Google. Even for Lena, I wanted her to have like a foaling, so a horse giving birth, and there needed there to be complications. So now I'm watching like veterinary training videos on foaling. It's crazy, but it's fascinating. And I am a little bit of a nerd where I do like, I am very curious. I do like to know, like, oh, how does that work? And I love hearing like how things happen behind the scenes. So in a lot of ways, being an author kind of bring some of my passions together. Like, I don't want to become an expert in it, but I just like having sometimes like, oh, how does that work? So
yeah, I think my brain would just be like, your creative writing, and then it's like, oh god, I don't know. And it's just like one after the other of having to make sure you got it right. But that's just
Mhm.
my brain. So
Well, a lot of times in writing, like, I have to do my fast draft without worrying sometimes about those details. And sometimes it's just like, I just have to get the story out, have to get it on the page. So what I do is I'll put an asterisk there, like, figure this out, whether it's, oh, what kind of car they're driving, or give this person a name, or yeah, what happens when you're giving birth and, to a horse and something happens. Like, I'll have to do that research later when
yeah,
I'm really trying to get words on the page. That helps me keep my rhythm going, but then I have to go back and kind of
sure.
do that kind of putzier work. So I totally get it. Like, like rabbit trails everywhere.
Yes. But and that's how my brain is. I am like squirrel.
Yep.
Oh, so how has your author journey been? You mentioned a couple different publishers. So how does that work? I mean, do you sign a contract? What all is taking place for your journey?
Sure. Well, I'm a little odd in that so many authors knew they wanted to be an author from the time they were a kid. And I can't really say that. But I did always love books. I always loved reading. I was always happiest, on my own with a book somewhere and getting lost in a story. I really wanted to be a mom. I really wanted to work with kids. When I went to college, I actually went to college for mission work because I do love traveling and learning about other cultures. So this whole author thing really came up kind of later in life for me, I guess, compared to a lot of people. Um, but I always loved reading with my kids, and we were kind of making up stories. And like I said, we lived in Idaho for a few years, and I'd get really homesick for Minnesota. So that's when I was like, when does Susan May Warren have another book out? Because her books were like set in Minnesota or had Minnesota characters. So I would go for that. And then I realized she started her own school for authors, like showing others how to write novels. And I didn't really think much at the time because I was in the middle of having babies, and I 4 kids that are kind of all came within 5 years. So we were pretty busy in those days. But funny enough, I worked as a server at a restaurant, and it's kind of a big chain restaurant, and they had an employee survey, and they said, hey, what's the goal you have for 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Like, totally random. But here I was married, I had kids, and those dreams had come true for me. And it made me think, like, well, what do I want to do? I don't know. But that's kind of where that spark started. Like, what if I was an author? Like, I thought I'd go into more children's books because I was just making a few things up on my own with my kids. And it still took a few more years, and we moved back to Minnesota. But when I knew I wanted to get started and that this was what I wanted to do, is I wanted to write novels and romances that had that Christian faith element to them. I remembered Susan May Warren had a author school, basically, course, and that's what I wanted to do. And so we did that. I did that. And we started going to conferences. I joined American Christian Fiction Writers, which is a national organization, and then come to find out that, hey, there's a local chapter in my state. So I joined that and got to know more about the writing industry, got to know other writers, started going to conferences and really just learning about it. And in the midst of all that, yes, there's rejections and there's contests you try to get into, but really it was when Sunrise, when Susan May Warren and Lindsay Harrell came together and developed Sunrise Publishing. They wanted to do a model of publishing that was different, and that was bringing a well-established author as a mentor for newer authors who had a lot of potential, because it's such a hard industry to break into. So those people who have made it, someone helped them, and so this was her way of kind of giving back. And so I applied. It's kind of like a tryout. You had to send in like a sample of your writing and show that you finished books already and things like that. And I was very blessed to get a contract with that. And so that's kind of where I got my start. At the same time, I was trying to develop this story and working with love-inspired suspense, and those kind of came at the same time. but I had to put the love inspired suspense on hold in order to do Sunrise because it was kind of a very intense year of mentoring and writing 2 books. And as soon as that was done, then I got back going with the love inspired suspense. And so it has been like, it's been really good, but it has been challenging to learn 2 different publishers. They kind of expect some different things. It really stretches you as a writer, but I think it's been really good. And I've done 1 book, 2 on my own, which will hopefully develop into something more. But there's so much out there, and yeah, it's been a bit of a rocky road, but it's been the people and the relationships and the networking that really have made it worth it, but also really helped forge my path, for me too. So
yeah, how many people were a part of that contest with Susan May Warren?
I don't really know how many apply. I want to say at least 30 or 40 for that first season. And then every new, like, established author that she brought on, there was another, like, a new contest. And it's blind. Like, they have somebody take all the identifying information off, and then they just look at the writing samples and they narrow it down to 10. Mm-hmm. And then once they got to 10, then they said, okay, for instance, we were going to be writing a Deep Haven story in Susan's world. So they said, hey, give us a scene. Kind of give us a premise. What kind of story would you set here? And let's see how you write this scene. And then that's when they brought in kind of more like, okay, who are you? What kind of writing have you done in the past? Those kind of things. What are your credentials? And then they narrowed it down to the 3 of us. So, yeah, it was... But it was a really cool experience and nerve-wracking, of course. But
sure.
But I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And this as a publisher, Sunrise puts a lot of effort into training us and to working with us and helping us develop our craft and our stories. And so they really want to keep us writing too. So that's been really cool, is that they've kept coming up with more opportunities. It wasn't just a one-time thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so you mentioned that you do have another book coming out with Sunrise, and you have got one that you've kind of been marinating on your own. What else is going on? Are you still working on more ideas? And
oh yes. So with Sunrise, I'm kind of moving into romantic suspense as well. A little, not too different than the contemporary romance, but a little bit more of that suspense element. So, I don't know if you know Lisa Phillips. She's another amazing author, and she works with Sunrise, and she does a lot of traditional as well as independent publishing. So she's kind of what we call a hybrid author who does both. And she's been doing a lot with Sunrise, so I've been working with her on some of her series now, and she and Susie are doing a crossover series, and that will come out this summer. So that's the kind of the firefighters, wildfires series that will be coming out. And then I've got 3 more contracts with them for 2025. Okay. So 2024 is going to be very busy. I've got 3 different books with them I'm writing. I'm still in contact and trying to work on a story developed for Love Inspired. And then I do have my own thing going. I mean, it's not going, but it's marinating, like you said. It's kind of in the back of my mind where I would love to develop my own small town in Minnesota, kind of more of like a farm town, a lake town, kind of which is where we live. And from that, I would love to kind of develop my own stories and do some small town contemporary romances set here. And then kind of a crossover or connected with a Southern California, more romantic suspense. So that's kind of what I have going on in the background of my brain as I'm doing everything else. Sure.
So and so you've obviously mentioned Susan May Warren as somebody that you read. Any other authors that you enjoy and have maybe inspired you?
Oh gosh, so many. But definitely Susie and now Lisa Phillips are really, I'm working with them too, just get to know their processes better, helps make me a better writer. but I do love the historicals. I love reading anything Rosanna White comes out with, or Julie Clausen. She's another Minnesota author. Erica Vetch or Gabriel Meyer. They're friends now because they're also Minnesotans, and right. But I've loved their books. And one of my good friends is Molly Rushmeyer, and we are close writer friends. So she doesn't live too far from me, so we get together. We try almost every week, but it doesn't always work out. But at least a few times a month to get together. So I will read anything she writes, and Lynette Eason. Yeah, there's just so many. I could keep going.
I'm actually just listening to a Lynette Eason book right now.
Oh, yeah. Love hers too. So, Lynn Blackburn's another one. And I think she was mentored by Lynette Eason. So, yeah, lots of fun books and stories out there. Just the bad thing about writing is it's taken away my reading time.
Yes. Yes. I hear you. That's where I'm like, if it's an audiobook, I can do it because I'm in my car driving places, and otherwise I don't get a chance to read that much. So it's unfortunate. But I want to thank you for joining me today. And I do want to read another thing that I got off of your website, and I just loved it. So it says, stories with heart, grace, a little humor, and the kind of characters that feel real. Fictional people with flaws and quirks, just like the rest of us. And I thought that is it. So I'm excited for you, and I wish you well on your journey. And I hope at the next author's retreat, I hope I get to go for one.
Right.
I will see you.
I hope so too. Well, if not, we should just get together.
There you go. I'd love it. So, thank you. It's Michelle Aleckson. Check out her books. And where can people go to find more about you?
Sure. Just michellealeckson.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So, yeah, it's not too hard to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.